The rain battered the small, weathered house on Maple Street, a relentless drumbeat against the windows that seemed to echo the storm raging in Daniel Carter's heart. He stood before the mirror, adjusting the collar of his shirt for the 10th time, his fingers trembling with a mix of anticipation and dread. It had been 6 years since he'd last gone on a date, 6 years since his world had shattered, leaving him to piece together a life for himself and his daughter, Lily. Tonight, he was stepping into the unknown, a blind date arranged by a coworker who swore this woman, Emily, was perfect for him. Daniel didn't believe in perfect anymore, but he believed in trying, for Lily, for the hope of something better. As he smoothed his hair and glanced at the clock, the doorbell rang, slicing through the quiet like a blade. He took a deep breath, crossed the living room, and opened the door. There she stood, Emily, her auburn hair damp from the rain, her smile warm but nervous. Then she said the words that made his heart stop. "My kids are waiting in the car." Daniel froze, his hand still on the doorknob, as the world tilted beneath him. 2 kids. She hadn't mentioned kids. His mind raced, picturing Lily upstairs, her crayons scattered across her bed, unaware of the seismic shift happening at the doorstep. This wasn't just a date anymore, it was a collision of lives, of responsibilities, of fragile hopes he wasn't sure he could carry. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of unexpected connections, please hit that like button, drop a comment, share this story with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Kindness Speaks for more heartwarming stories that remind us we're never alone. Your support keeps these stories alive. Daniel's life hadn't always been this heavy. Once, he'd been a man full of laughter, a carpenter who built furniture with his hands and dreams with his wife, Sarah. They'd planned a big family, a house filled with chaos and love. But when Lily was 2, Sarah's headaches turned into doctor's visits, then scans, then a diagnosis that stole her away in less than a year. Glioblastoma. The word still felt like a curse. Daniel had buried his wife, his best friend, and with her, the version of himself who believed life could be kind. Now, at 38, he was a single dad to Lily, a bright, curious 7-year-old who asked questions he couldn't always answer, like why the stars looked sad some nights. His days were a blur of work, school runs, and bedtime stories, each one a small victory in a life that felt like a constant battle against loneliness. Dating hadn't been on his radar. How could it be, when every spare moment was spent keeping Lily's world steady? But his coworker, Mike, had been relentless, insisting Daniel deserved a chance at happiness. "Emily's great," Mike had said. "She's kind, funny, and she's been through her own stuff. Give it a shot." So here he was, standing in his doorway, staring at a woman whose life was as complicated as his own, her words about her kids hanging in the air like a challenge he hadn't prepared for. Emily's car was parked across the street, its windows fogged from the rain and the warmth of the 2 children inside. Daniel could just make out their silhouettes, one small, one slightly larger, pressed against the glass, watching the world outside. His heart clenched. He hadn't signed up for this. Lily was his everything, and the thought of bringing someone else's children into their carefully constructed life felt like inviting a storm into a house already battered by wind. He invited Emily inside, his manners overriding his panic, and she stepped into the living room, her coat dripping onto the hardwood floor. She apologized for the surprise, explaining that her babysitter had cancelled at the last minute, and she hadn't wanted to cancel the date. "I should have told you," she said, her voice soft but steady. I didn't know how." Daniel nodded, his throat tight, unsure if he was angry or just overwhelmed. He offered her a seat, poured her a glass of water, and they sat across from each other, the silence heavy with unspoken questions. Upstairs, he could hear Lily humming to herself, a melody she'd made up about the moon, and it grounded him, reminded him of what mattered most. Emily began to talk, her words tumbling out like a confession. She was a widow, too, she said. Her husband had died 3 years ago in a car accident, leaving her with Noah, 9, and Sophie, 5. She'd been drowning in grief and responsibility ever since, trying to be everything for her kids while holding on to the pieces of herself. Daniel listened, his own pain mirrored in her story, and something in him softened, even as his fear grew. The evening unfolded awkwardly, the weight of their realities pressing against the small talk they tried to make. Daniel kept glancing at the window, picturing Emily's kids in the car, wondering if they were cold, if they were scared, if they were wondering why their mom was taking so long. He thought of Lily, who'd been thrilled at the idea of her dad going to meet a new friend, her innocence a stark contrast to the complexity of this moment. Emily sensed his unease and offered to leave, but something in her eyes, vulnerability, maybe, or quiet strength, made him ask her to stay. He suggested she bring the kids inside, out of the rain. She hesitated, then nodded, gratitude flickering across her face. When she returned with Noah and Sophie, Daniel's breath caught. Noah was tall for his age, with a guarded expression that reminded Daniel of himself at that age, while Sophie clung to her mother's hand, her wide eyes taking in the unfamiliar house. Lily bounded downstairs at the sound of new voices, her curiosity outweighing her shyness, and within minutes, she was showing Sophie her collection of glow-in-the-dark stars, the giggles filling the house. Noah stayed quiet, sitting on the couch with a book, but Daniel noticed the way his eyes followed his sister, protective, wary. The scene was both beautiful and terrifying, a glimpse of what could be, and a reminder of how fragile it all was. As the weeks passed, Daniel and Emily saw each other again, tentative at first, then with growing ease. The dates were less conventional now, playdates at the park, pizza nights with all 3 kids, moments stolen over coffee while the children played. Daniel struggled with the chaos of it all. He'd spent years building a routine for him and Lily, a fortress against the unpredictability of life, and now he was inviting in variables he couldn't control. Noah's quiet resentment unnerved him. The boy seemed to carry his father's absence like a weight, and Daniel didn't know how to reach him. Sophie, on the other hand, was a whirlwind of energy, her chatter filling the silences but sometimes overwhelming Lily, who was used to being the center of her dad's world. Daniel wrestled with guilt, wondering if he was betraying Lily by opening their lives to others. He lay awake at night, replaying moments from his marriage to Sarah, wondering if she'd approve, if she'd want him to take this risk. The fear of failing Lily, of failing Emily's kids, was a constant shadow. Yet there were moments of light, too, moments when Emily's laughter made his chest ache with something like hope, when Noah smiled at a joke Daniel told, when Lily and Sophie held hands at the playground. These moments were small, fragile, but they were enough to keep him moving forward. Emily, too, had her struggles. She confided in Daniel about the guilt she felt for wanting happiness again, for daring to imagine a life beyond survival. She spoke of the nights she cried after the kids were asleep, overwhelmed by the responsibility of raising them alone, terrified of making the wrong choices. Her honesty disarmed Daniel, peeling back his defenses. He began to see her not just as a potential partner but as a mirror of his own resilience, his own scars. They were 2 people who'd been broken by loss, trying to build something new without forgetting the past. The kids, though, were the real challenge. Noah's guardedness softened over time, but he still kept Daniel at arm's length, testing him with sharp questions or pointed silence. Lily, meanwhile, started asking if Emily was going to be her new mom, her innocence both heartwarming and heartbreaking. Daniel didn't have answers, only a growing sense that this was bigger than him, bigger than any of them. He started to see the potential for a family, not the one he'd planned with Sarah, but a different one, patched together from broken pieces, held together by courage and care. The turning point came one rainy afternoon, months into the tentative relationship. Daniel had invited Emily and her kids over for a movie night, a low-stakes evening that felt safe. But when a power outage plunged the house into darkness, chaos erupted. Sophie screamed, terrified of the dark, and Lily, usually so calm, started to cry. Noah, trying to be the big brother, snapped at both girls to be quiet, his frustration spilling over. Emily rushed to comfort Sophie, while Daniel knelt beside Lily, his heart pounding. In that moment, he felt the weight of the blended lives. The mess, the fear, the love. He grabbed flashlights from the kitchen, handed one to Noah, and suggested they build a fort in the living room, something to make the dark less scary. Noah hesitated, then took the flashlight, his expression softening as he helped Daniel drape blankets over chairs. Emily joined in, her voice steady as she told a silly story about a brave knight who conquered the dark, and soon, all three kids were laughing, their fears forgotten. Daniel watched them, his chest tight with emotion, and realized this was what family could be. Not perfect, not planned, but real, messy, and full of heart. By the time the power came back on, the fort was a sprawling masterpiece, filled with pillows and giggles. Daniel and Emily sat on the couch, watching the kids play, their hands brushing against each other. For the first time, Daniel didn't pull away. He saw a future, not a clear one, but one worth fighting for. The challenges weren't gone. There would be more arguments, more doubts, more moments when the weight of their pasts felt too heavy. But there would also be more nights like this, where the dark gave way to light, where broken pieces started to fit together. Daniel knew he wasn't replacing Sarah, just as Emily wasn't replacing her husband. They were building something new, something that honored the past while reaching for the future. Lily, Noah, and Sophie deserved that, a chance to grow up in a home filled with love, even if it looked different than anyone had expected. As the months turned into a year, Daniel and Emily grew closer, their lives intertwining in ways that felt both impossible and inevitable. They faced the hard moments together. Noah's first tearful talk about his dad, Lily's quiet fears about change, Sophie's boundless energy testing everyone's patience. They celebrated the small victories, too, Noah teaching Lily how to ride a bike, Emily and Daniel stealing a quiet moment to dance in the kitchen, the kids' laughter echoing through the house. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. Daniel looked at Emily one evening, as she tucked Sophie into bed beside Lily, and felt a gratitude so deep it brought tears to his eyes. They were a family, not by blood but by choice, by the stubborn belief that love could grow in the cracks of broken things. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you of the power of second chances and the beauty of unexpected love, please hit that like button, share it with someone who needs a little hope, and subscribe to Kindness Speaks. And in the comments, please share a moment when kindness or love changed your life. We'd love to hear your story. Your engagement keeps these stories alive and inspires others to believe in the goodness of the world. Special request, in the comments, please share a moment when kindness or love changed your life. Your stories matter, and we can't wait to read them.